Hello, this has been a long time coming. This first part of texturing is finally done. First, we'll kind of just go through things in Unreal, then we'll more or less show it in Painter, as that's where I did a lot of my texturing more than anywhere else. I put some of it into Maya mainly just for this keyboard thing over here, just to make sure that would work. You probably click like my move around with my mouse. But anyway, this computer station is kind of hard to see with that. But I created an entire keyboard just with the alphabet used within Star Wars. Um, Numbers at the top, QWERTY just for the rest of it, and then there is a period and comma on the right hand side of it, and then there is a slash and a question mark on the left side of it. These other ones could just be used for other analog things. I'll probably go back and add some more textures. Otherwise, these are just more reflective monitor screens up there as well. I probably should go add more detail, but that was one of the things I used with a texture sheet. This is a much probably better use of a trim sheet. Have the pipes, you can see the different levels of textures, all different roughnesses on them. You can see the normal stamp that's on the middle part of the metal. There's three different options I gave myself when I created the trim sheet. This is kind of just the hallway section. This is the giant arc thing that we had talked about before. There should be a broken polygon somewhere up there, but I can kind of barely see it. Oh, I created it to where I can't walk through it right now. Oh yeah, cool. You can still see the normal stamp on the inside. Additionally, we just kind of got the ice texture done, which is not really a trim sheet. It's just kind of like one of those infinite textures you use over and over again. And here is the snow. Pretty basic, very rough. Might need to smooth it out a little bit, honestly. This is the ice texture. Added a lot of scratches to it, and that was about it. As part of this, we're just getting everything in Unreal. Uh, thank goodness things worked out for this arc, because if they didn't, I don't know what we would have done. Obviously, these are all kind of poking through. Things will be moved around. You're only ever going to be like walking back and forth through this thing anyway. Overall, it's pretty basic texture, but it looks pretty nice. Has a little bit of a powderiness to it that I actually really like. This is what I'm most like, I don't know how to feel about it, because it's like, a trim sheet was probably not the best choice for this, but it's what we try to get to work. As everything else kind of looks in line with one another, they all have this kind of weird powdery feel. This just feels off. I probably need to go back, do something else. Maybe there's just not enough roughness. Maybe it's just too smooth in a lot of areas. And that's kind of where I'm thinking. Like, this kind of reflective metal doesn't really work either, but since it's in the shadows, it's kind of helped out by that. And the ice up there is just so far away that you barely even tell what's going on, so it's perfectly fine that it's the same exact texture as all these ice balls. And then, of course, you have your different corners. This one's an outward corner, this one's an inward corner, another inward corner on the other side, and another outward corner for the other side. And that is it for that, but now we can kind of show the rest of it. F11. Let me see if I can pull up the texture parts. Just first to kind of just show this off. Um, this is the arc color. Granted, the arc is made up of three different colors. So this is the insert. Let me just try to. That's good. This is like the arc color base. You see there's a lot of stretching in everywhere just because it's only in a certain area where that part of it actually is on the map. Just how this red's only on the side over here. This part especially is really weird to look at, but it has the most things going on with it. computer texture. You can kind of see just based off of that alone that it's a trim sheet, because it is. Let me see if I can just... And it's not gonna... Okay, cool. Yeah, and you can see this is one of the trim sheets I made. Obviously, there's a lot more normal mapping and whatnot going on with it. Specular, not specular, metallic, roughness, normal. Hallway texture, this is the other texture sheet. I have no idea why that's kind of displayed like that or why it's actually transparent. That is interesting to me. It is never made to be transparent, which is probably why we don't have anything else going on with that. But overall, metallic, roughness, and normal, as I said before, this is why we had the three different versions. You can see that you have like different versions of like width you can kind of put with the metal that I use for the middle of the pipe. Nice texture, very simple, honestly, same kind of situation going on. One of the better textures, very simple. So no one looks atrocious just because the way it came out is so handily sided on one side. Because in all honesty, I done the layout thing with the snow floor and it only kind of just fits right up there. So that's kind of just everything on a base level. But yeah, snow textures, you have all this. Ice textures, you have all this. Hallway textures, you have all this. I did not want to go all the way back to geometry. Computer textures, you have all this, which is one of the texture sheets. Or one of the trim sheets. Okay, I have gone way too far back. Textures. Computer. And then the arc has so much because it was the first thing we did and it's split into three different things. And you can see over here that it's still three different things, which is a bit atrocious, but it was a lot easier than going back and remaking the entire thing. Which I had almost done because I was confused with what Unreal was trying to get me to do. That is that for Unreal. Now if we can just kind of open up the other important info. I have a lot of just different files and whatnot. This is kind of like all the stuff we did for this one because texture sheets. So, texture sheet 1. It kind of led to a weird naming scheme though. You can see base plane and then the texture names for a couple different things, which just means that they're on a trim sheet because I had exported out a base plane for them to use. Adobe Paint is now opening. But you know, my computer can definitely not handle having that and Unreal open. As I said before, I really didn't do much texturing in Maya. I could have looked at it a bit more, but it was really just me double checking things were working the way I wanted, which was really only with the keyboard that I needed to. It was kind of just making sure the trim sheets lined up, and that was, I guess, also true for the hallway and whatnot. So anything that had to do with that, I had to go in there and make sure the UVs were moved around. So I suppose we can look at that too. But yeah, trim sheet. Uh, do, 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 do. There is a lot going on over here. Oh boy. I actually don't even know if all the folders are open. Oh yeah, plastic, metal, pipe. I think they're in a weird order. Oh, this is gonna be funky because I should not be trying to have this load things open and not. Oh boy. Okay. Anywho, pipe, found texture, artificial leather, has a generator on it. But yeah. The metal has a lot more going on with it. Just a lot of different types of metal, a lot of different texturing that kind of comes from that. I rotated it around just to kind of get it going the opposite way of this. And then the quote unquote plastic folder, which is really the rubber pipes, has all this going on. Okay, we didn't do anything, so doesn't matter. Waiting for that to close. Texture sheet 2. And then we'll kind of go also to texturing in progress after we show off ice texture and snow texture. So this could be a bit of a longer video, but just to kind of show off everything, make sure everything is seen. But I was almost said this probably when they bought Alchemist, but Alchemist is what became the other thing. But this one, if I open the correct one, should, oh yeah, it should be the keyboard. Because the last one was the hallway slash pipe, because those kind of all work together, function together. It is a much better use of a trim sheet than this, as this has its issues. And honestly, I think it's just because it's not detailed enough. It doesn't feel right within the environment yet. Like, I don't think maybe the metal part should be metallic, or maybe this just shouldn't be as shiny. It's hard for me to tell right now what the actual inherent issue is with it. Like, this just probably doesn't have enough texture. Like, it has very little going on. But, glass for monitors has all these dirt stains, coated metal, and a keyboard section, which I had gone back in Photoshop afterwards and colored in all the paint to make sure there's no longer seams, because originally I had the trim sheet looking quite different. Like, this is the ID mask. Not a very good showing, you can't really get a close look at it. Uh, do, 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 do. Layers, I'm not sure how convoluted they are right now, but keyboard. Keys, normal stamps. Around the keyboard. Hello? Or don't open for me? Okay. Screens, which kind of being this section. Dark metal, which is towards the top. I should not be. I accidentally clicked that out. That's gonna be a weird, funky thing. Stud line, I was originally gonna add a bunch of normal stamps to this to make it more of a stud line, which I might have to go back and do eventually. Anyway, in all reality, I'm probably gonna retexture the computer section because it just doesn't look how I'd want it to right now, which is a bit unfortunate. And then, of course, there was the last thing I opened, which is just more metal stuff, which is kind of like all this stuff that I added to this to get some really cool texture that doesn't really get shown off very well, just because it's on such a small area. We didn't change anything. I mean, we clicked some things off and on. We opened some folders, but that really doesn't do much or do anything in particular. Ice texture. Ba-da-da-da-da. I guess, I was about to say, will that load? I could probably load up Maya, but that's just going to make everything go slower. Because the computer does not like having both of those things open either. Although that would be very helpful to be able to constantly just update the texture, see how it looks in multiple different things. Though I think if you're adding them to Unreal, it still counts them as a separate texture anyway, because you're like copying them over basically. You're importing them. You're not just using them. I guess you could probably save to that folder and replace them that way. And then it could constantly update itself with that, and that could probably work. But the other way around, not so much, and I just have to check if that works. But yeah, very simple. Used a bunch of images I had found. Or don't show me? Okay. Because I also know that this, generally speaking, fills up like the entire like UV square. So if I just get like this one thing done, so add all these different stuff or not, add some scratches and everything, mess around with that, kind of get to a point that I like it because if we turn off the scratches, it gets a bit brighter versus the alternative, which I guess it tried to load and then didn't load. Yeah, brighter, not so bright. You can see there's a bunch of scratches and everything all over the place. And I really like how that turns out. Discard. From there we have one more painter thing to look at. I could probably do multiple textures at the same time. I think you could probably include multiple objects because I was able to fuse, I guess as long as you combine them. But then I don't know if you would separate them as you bring them back into Unreal. So you're better just doing things individually anyway. It'd only be better to bring in multiple at the same time just for the sake of a video like this. Outside of this, you're probably still better doing them individually anyway. And for sure, things like the ice walls where the texture is so basic and so filling, it works because you can then just throw that on everything else that is ice based. Because that thing on its own fills up the UV square, so of course everything else will just, yeah, everything else will be fine. And hopefully they all line up properly and everything once the whole building's sorted. That, or I'll just combine a bunch of different pieces of the walls and I'll make them this one giant object to have this texture laid out upon, and that's going to be the secondary idea that I hope I don't have to do, but probably will. Once again, very simple. Fill layer, add these different things, roughness, height, base map, normal. Kind of just found some really good textures I can add. Okay. It's so weird to have these controls and also have Unreal's controls, which I don't like. I love Unity's controls so much more. Same with like this, just because they all run off like the same thing that Maya does as well. And then texturing in progress, which is kind of where I tested a couple different things. I didn't even use the metallic or anything in there. I was just using base color and normal maps. And that was all I was using whenever I was in Maya. Because at first I was like, oh, they're not giving me the metallic option. That's weird. It's because I was using Lambert. Lambert doesn't give you those options because it's the most basic color options ever. Gives you a little bit of transparency if you want that. And that's about as creative as you're going to get with Lambert. You have to use the like other substance info stuff, the more complex Arnold shaders to really start using all the metallics. And they, of course, give you all those options when you do that, which is also how I've done before to like kind of do this weird car I modeled back in my vehicles and characters class. It was like a half tank thing. It was very cool. I enjoyed it. Oh, right. This is going to be funky. Try to get this all sorted out. But now it's lagging. So, fun times. And you can even see through the UV editor right now to actually see the objects behind it. So that is honestly equally fascinating. Oh. Oh, this is just a bar now? Weird. Weird. I mean, as long as it gives me the blue line, I don't really care where it ends up. But yeah, you can see this thing's laid out now to where it actually has to go out like this just to get it to work. Similar thing with this. They are different models. This has the kind of upward part. Pipe has this weird situation. It's really not possible to see the gnome map on here for some reason, but I still add the gnome map anyway, and you just kind of have to like move it along, and you can find the small one there, the bigger one there, and the medium one there. And then you can see the longer parts there, up there for the black. We're into a weird situation where we're trying to make things transparent, which also kind of makes sense now that we saw the other one look transparent within Unreal. Or at least that it was trying to be transparent with its base color. Do 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 do. okay, I guess these things aren't a part of hallway, so add selected. And then this is kind of that weird situation where I was like, yeah, this, I knew it wasn't going to look good in here, but I just wanted to make sure things lined up. And it was kind of more about getting these UVs to line up because I cleaned up certain things. Added that. All these different things are going across the metal stud section, which includes the frames for the monitors. And then all these different pieces kind of lining up here with the black. Some of them could be bigger, some of them could probably get some more detail on them. Honestly, I'll probably go back and remake this texture anyway to make it look a lot better, make it a lot more detailed. I would have liked to add more details to the back, but adding more details to the back wasn't really an option when I was trying to use a trim sheet. So this is a kind of failed example of using a trim sheet. This was not the best time to use one, and there are better ways to get this texture looking more appropriate. But that is everything for this video.